Good morning, everybody. Welcome to TED Talks Ball. And I guess I should say good morning on the West Coast where it's 11 a.m. Good afternoon on the East Coast where it's 2 p.m. And good evening in jolly old England where Nick Ludlam is coming to us from across the pond where it is about 7 p.m. in the evening, if I did my math correctly.
It is, but I'm not in England. I'm in Wales. Very different. Very different.
Oh, my bad.
That's about as bad as
the United
bad as saying
Kingdom.
San
You're
Fran.
all united, but not when it comes to soccer.
Definitely not. Anything else.
Or rugby, or probably cricket, or all those other fun sports that aren't football.
Oddly, cricket is the only one where we are together.
Okay. There you go. It's like baseball, but it goes on for 3 days. You know, it's fun.
Can go up to 5.
It's
a lot of fun. I must be honest. You can get very, very drunk on a 5-day game. That's for sure.
Oh, I can only imagine. Holy smokes, that would be pretty incredible. They do take breaks though, like to sleep and stuff, right? I mean,
yeah. They'll have lunch breaks, dinner breaks. They literally will play from first thing in the morning until there's no more light. And that game goes on for 5 days, this test cricket.
Very cool. Well, thanks for joining. Obviously, we got a lot to talk about this week. But before we go into too much of that, just want to call out, we got some early audience members. We had Laura Cat stop by a little bit early. She said, "Hey, Ted, have a great show. Congrats on 500 subscribers. Yay." Yeah, really exciting. Hit 500. Actually, it was the other night. So kind of stood still yesterday. But nonetheless, 500 holding steady and hopefully grow from there. The ideal goal is to hit 1,000 where you hit monetization from the advertisements. But for now, I can at least start offering subscriber membership to the channel. And then also, before too long, should be able to have some super chats too. So when those chats get really busy and you really want your chat read, or if you say something that you don't think I would normally read, you know, put a few bucks behind it, and I'll be a lot more compelled to read what you have to say, right? Twist my arm, if you will, right? So thanks, Laura Cat. Appreciate that. It was great. I met Laura Cat actually. It was the last Monday of training camp. She got Bashar a ticket to the VIP, and Bashar got all these cool pictures with, I think you probably saw them, with all the players. And we met for pizza. I also got to meet John Chapman and Breezy that day. And so really, really special stuff. So great to meet you, Laura, and thanks for stopping by. We got Randy Daytona in the house. He's saying over under Brock interceptions, 1.5 go. I guess he means for the game, Saturday, but it sounds like it's only gonna be a few series. So, I mean, I'm hoping it's under 1,
I would imagine under, yeah.
Yeah.
Most season maybe 2 drives.
I think Kyle hopefully learned from last week. He'll actually call some run plays for Purdy, unlike he did for Lance on the first 3 drives. That's one of my frustrations. We'll get to that here in a minute. But real quick, just got East Coast Niner in the house saying, "How's it going, guys? Welcome, East Coast Niner." And Randy chimed in one more time, says, "I'm here to listen to Ted and Nick." Oh, well, thank you. But, offer your opinions too. We don't want an echo chamber. We're not here, saying, tell us we're right if you disagree. Like, quite the contrary. If we say something you disagree with, let us have it. And don't be shy. We love the interaction. So were you it seemed like you were trying to say something there, Nick, but maybe
no,
Nick froze.
No, I'm still here. You're good.
Okay, good. So, I mean, I guess we kind of segued into that already with last week. I mean, I don't know if you saw some of my show titles from this week, but it can kind of give you an idea of my headspace a little bit. But, I said, let's see, these are some older ones, but come on. I'm fumbling around here.
It's okay.
So I said,
it's preseason. These things are going to happen. There's a lot to learn from last weekend. I mean, Trey did not have a great day. Some of that's going to be play calling. Some of that's going to be the fact that the guy hasn't played a competitive down in 11 months. The guy needs, we need to cut him some slack. You know, it's his first time back from any injury, any quarterback, whether they're a rookie, whether they're new to the league, whether they're going to, you know, whether it's Aaron Rodgers, first snap back after a substantial period of time out is going to be some nerves. It's going to be a bit rusty, and he was playing behind a pretty shocking O-line. Let's be honest; they were abysmal. I've got Cullenders with less holes. You know, it's insane what they let through that day. So it's not all on Trey, but at the same time, you know, a lot of this thing with Purdy is my big thing is he going to play week one? If Purdy's going to play week one, then yes, I want to see Purdy have a couple of drives in the next game. If he's not going to play week one, I don't want Purdy playing in the next game because that's just going to take away reps from Sam Darnold. It's going to take reps away from Trey Lance. And if either of those two are going to play week one, they're the ones that need the reps this weekend coming.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's pretty clear that Kyle is going to play Purdy week one. It's been pretty clear that Lance and Darnold are competing for QB2.
Yeah.
And, they really haven't let Lance or Darnold have a lot of reps with the first team at all. And so, like, if they're not having Purdy start week one, they better figure it out quick and get some first team reps for whoever is. I think we've been wasting reps on Darnold. I don't think he's qualified to be QB2. I think, if we find out that Purdy wasn't ready week one, we're going to feel like we wasted a lot of first team reps on him too. But, Kyle's been pretty consistent in his messaging through the season, through the off season, and everything I saw in camp, everything we saw in the joint practices. And then, just the fact that Purdy was held out of the Raiders game, he said, we're holding out the starters, and he did. Mm-hmm. So that's Purdy. He's the starter. I mean, I just don't think – I'm not sure it's the right decision to start Purdy week one. But I'm also not saying that should be Lance. I'm just saying we should have a competition so we know. Because, this whole thing of like, oh, well, Purdy won last year. Yeah, he did. But he had a major injury to his throwing elbow. So just like Lance had a major injury, so did Purdy. And so far, Purdy has not looked the same from what I saw in camp, from what we've heard in joint practices and what we've been hearing even the last few days, even the day yesterday when he didn't throw any interceptions, he threw 2 dropped interceptions. So, and interceptions in camp, they don't mean everything. Doesn't mean he's not going to play well in the regular season. But they also don't mean nothing either. And it's not just interceptions. There's interceptions. There's too many sacks. And what I saw in camp was a lot of really poor deep balls where everything was either overthrown or underthrown. And it sounds like that's getting a little bit better. It sounds like he's hit a few more deep throws in the last few days. So that's really good to hear. And his completion percentage looks better over the last few days. So that's a good sign. But people like laughing it off or blowing it off, saying it doesn't mean anything, that's a mistake, folks. And especially if you want to use Jimmy G as your example, because he famously had those 5 picks the year we went to the Super Bowl. But the people will say, oh, well, Jimmy took us to the Super Bowl. I'm like, no, Jimmy got carried. He threw 12 pass attempts in the last 6 quarters leading up to the Super Bowl. Most people know 8 pass attempts in the NFC Championship game. But what a lot of people don't know is there was only 4 in the second half of the Vikings game, too, because he had thrown an interception to Kendricks, and he threw literally to Kendricks 2 more times that he dropped. And Kyle just pulled the plug on the Jimmy experience for that game. And we leaned on our number 2 run game and our number 2 defense. And we, pounded the Vikings into submission, essentially, to get to the NFC Championship game. So, and then in the Super Bowl, Jimmy had a good first half, but, he threw an interception. He threw an interception in the second half. And of course, the famous overthrow to Sanders. There were also quite a few times where Kittle was open and Jimmy didn't see him or didn't even attempt to throw him the ball. That could have been easy first downs. And so, we lost the Super Bowl. So, saying it doesn't matter, I think QB has really held this team back a lot. I mean, I'm not going to say it's all on Jimmy or all on, Purdy's injury. Well, it kind of was on Purdy's injury, but, it's not his fault he got injured completely. I mean, even there, I have a little thing where there was a clip from when he threw that incompletion to Ayuk. And a lot of people say, oh, Ayuk should have caught that. And it's true, Ayuk should have caught it. But I can tell you, Ayuk would have had a much better chance of catching that ball if Purdy had thrown it on the run. If he had more of a cannon of an arm, and you'd have to stop and set up and then throw the ball, allowing Cody Barton to, recover on the play and get his hand in between. And when your hand's in between your face and the ball, when the ball clears the hand, you only have a split second to react to it. So, I mean, NFL receivers can make that catch, but it's a lot tougher when someone obstructs your vision. Certainly,
it is.
And I guess
Purdy did show a couple of times during the season that he can throw on the run. He showed it in his first when he came in for Jimmy in the game against the Dolphins. He showed it really quite well. I was quite surprised actually because let's be honest, we all thought the season was dead at that point.
But, no, he can. He can definitely throw on the run. He can throw off platform. It's just not very far. He doesn't have a really big arm, so like he's not going to zip it 20, 30 yards downfield like that. He can do little dump offs and stuff, sure, no doubt. That's one of Purdy's great attributes: his quickness, his ability, his footwork. There's a lot to like. But my point of that, going through all that was the announcers on that play were like, because basically Purdy set up and he threw and he got creamed right after he threw the ball. The announcers were like, "Whoa, buddy, we like to see that, but careful, we need you." And it was sort of like, Purdy has always played, with sort of a reckless abandon throughout his whole career. And this is just a few games before he got injured. And it was foreshadowing of what was coming, that Purdy has played reckless, honestly, for a long time. It's part of what I like about him, honestly. It's part of what endears me to him. But it's also a concern, just like it endears me to Debo and Kittle, the way they run through people, but it's a concern for injury too. You can like it, but also be concerned about it at the same time.
True. I mean, a lot of that's going to be a product of where he came from at Iowa. He didn't have anything there. He had to be the big man. He had to be the superstar on the team. He had to drag that team kicking and screaming on a number of occasions. And that's where his numbers suffered. And that's ultimately why he ended up falling down in the draft. Because you look at him in his first 2 years at Iowa, he was being touted as a first-round draft pick. It was only as things went by, because he had no talent, realistically, to go to at all. And that's when he started to tumble. He had to push the thing out. And I think a lot of that will come out of his game as he grows in the NFL. And that's why I don't really tend to worry so much about the whole reckless abandon side of things. That will come as he becomes more and more accustomed. He at the end of the day, he still only has 7 games in the league. That will come now. He trusts his weapons. He'll trust his offensive line, and that will improve. So I wouldn't be too worried about that moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, it should improve. I'm just, we thought the same thing. We thought Jimmy would improve, but he really didn't after his 5-0 start. So, I think it's reasonable to say that Purdy should improve. I'm not going to say that he will, like some people do, but I'm there. And I also just want a quick correction: it's Iowa State Cyclones is where
Iowa State. My apologies. Sorry,
Kittle and Sam Laporta. But yeah, no big deal. Just want to make sure, in case anybody was wondering out there. So Randy says, I agree. Game 2 is unnecessary. I'd say game 4, all the starters are in for 2 drives. That's it. Well, there is no game 4 of preseason.
There's only 3 now.
Yeah, there's only 3. And so it's basically the Broncos tomorrow evening at 5:30 Pacific Standard Time. And then next week we play the Chargers. Go Chargers. So I mean, you got to play him some, because I mean, this is the thing I've been saying about people that are like, oh, Purdy proved it last year. I've heard a lot of that just even today, arguing with people on the timeline. And, Purdy proved a lot last year. I mean, I don't go as much off the wins, because, I mean, I've always, well, not always, Jimmy G taught me that QB wins aren't everything. It's a lot like these preseason interceptions. They're not everything. They're not nothing. QB wins aren't everything. QB wins aren't nothing. Mm-hmm. But I'll tell you, when QB wins can be very deceiving, especially when you have the best group of weapons in football, which we had last season. We had a very solid offensive line. We had the number 1 D in the NFL, and like prohibitively, like yards, scoring, and tied for most interceptions. And you got Kyle designing and calling the plays. Like there are a lot of QBs who could, not I should say a lot. There's at least 10 QBs in the NFL who could step in and do as well or better than Purdy did in this same setup. And so that's my, so I've gotten into some trouble with people calling him mid. Because they're like, oh, you hate Purdy. And I'm like, no, I really like Purdy. And actually calling a rookie QB mid for an NFL starting quarterback is actually very, very high praise. I think there's only a few I would even throw into that list. Like it'd be Purdy, Herbert, and Roethlisberger in recent memory. So, it's amazing for a rookie. But as you start talking about a really good QB, you stop talking about rookies. You start comparing them to the rest of the QBs, and that's where I feel like Jimmy G was below average and Purdy's a little bit better. So I called him mid. It's kind of a mean thing to say mid. You could say average. Mediocre also sounds kind of bad. You could say middle of the pack. I think it's probably one of the nicest ways to put it. But mid, yeah. Admittedly, I was being a little bit of a dig the way I said it, but I still stand by the call. A rookie QB middle of the pack for NFL QBs is really, really good and really, really rare. So if he does improve, that's great. If he does, I'm just not sure that even if Purdy improves, that the DCs knowing what he does doesn't nullify that some, as they learn to take away his strengths and limit his strengths and take away and attack his weaknesses.
That's true, but I don't know. We'll have to see how things go. Realistically, I love the fact how he does seem to have a sixth sense when the rush is coming from his blind side. He does seem to know when to get out of there and give himself that extra half second, which is all an NFL QB should need to be able to complete something on the outside. So hopefully he can develop that and everything else will come along with it. Because I'll be honest, I'm firmly in the camp that I believe Brock is our QB1 for the future.
I mean, I believe he's our QB1 for this year, at least to start. I really wish there was a competition. I feel like no competition landed Purdy at QB3 last year, and I don't think he was our third best QB. And my whole thing is like, what happens if Jimmy G never gets injured? And then no one will answer the damn question. They're like, oh, what happens if Bledsoe never gets, or what happens? It's like, no, the answer is we would not know what we have in Purdy. They would be reinstalling Trey as QB1 because Purdy wouldn't have proved himself in any games. That's what would have happened. So I'm afraid of that happening this year. That's the part that they can't make this connection that like Kyle has never had a real QB1 competition. I mean, people say there was between Lance and Jimmy 2021, but Lance maybe had 10 or 15 reps with the first team. That year.
I don't believe that was ever a competition. They never had any intention of playing. He
had like 275 reps with the first team. That's who the starter was going to be. We weren't paying Jimmy G $27 million to never play a snap in 2021, which could have happened if Lance started and stayed healthy all of 2021. That was not in the cards for 2021, folks. So, yeah, no doubt about it. Randy says 3. We need at least 6. And he means preseason games. We do need 6. We need to take 6 this year. Whoever the QB Kyle picks and whoever the QB ends up being, they need to win ring number 6 for the 49ers, or like half the fan base is going to be like, why wasn't it the other guy? Right? I mean, that's the case. So, I mean, it really needs to happen this year. We need to take 6. And I hope we do it. I mean, but as far as Purdy being the guy long term, like, if he improves, I could see it, Nick, but like I'm not paying Purdy 40, 50, 60, whatever it's up to by then. It's probably like 60 million for franchise QBs at that point. And we haven't even seen Burrow yet. He'll probably be 54 or 55. And I'm not paying Purdy that for what I saw from him in 2022.
That's fine. But at the end of the day, we're not in 2024. We're not there yet. He's got years in which to progress. There's no point worrying about that question yet because we're not there.
I'm just saying, if he doesn't, there's no way I'm paying him top QB money, and you kind of have to. Yeah, no, I know, I agree. All right, yeah, maybe you can get a better deal then. I don't know, but bottom line is that's sort of where it sounds like we agree there, and we both agree he could improve. Absolutely, he could improve. He could improve his footwork. He could step up better in the pocket, not bail back left all the time. He could throw with more anticipation, get better synced up with the weapons. Unfortunately, a lot of the time he had to get synced up with the weapons and OTAs and minicamp, he was still not even cleared to play yet. So that put him behind on his improvement schedule. But he's gotten plenty of first team reps since then. And maybe that's why Kyle hasn't given Lance any. I mean, I can understand not giving Lance any first team reps if you really truly believe that Purdy is going to be the same in 2023 as he was in 2022. It's just, I don't think we've seen that yet. And so until then, I would kind of want to hedge my bets a little bit and just be like, well, let's try and at least have Lance as ready as we can too, in case Purdy doesn't play well, or God forbid that he gets injured. But that's just doesn't seem like that's going to be in the cards. So we'll see. Randy also said these young men need to develop. Yeah, they're both TBD. We can't crown Purdy yet, and we can't write Lance off yet, even despite that game on Sunday, even despite JT O'Sullivan's video. I pulled out three or four, and I wouldn't even get a chance to finish, but I pulled out 3 or 4 really positive plays out of there. And there were more. There were some where JT O'Sullivan was a little too harsh too, I'll be honest. I did notice that, who was it? It was Kurt Warner, was basically saying he didn't think it was as bad as a lot of people were saying, the performance by Trey.
It is what it is. I'm not massively worried. I mean, he's going to be playing behind a completely different O-line. If he does start week 1, he's going to have a huge amount more protection. He'll have better weapons. I'm not even remotely concerned that Sam Darnold looked better in that game. Frankly,
because he played against the worst defense.
Exactly. I would expect Sam Darnold to look better in that particular game.
And we were actually running the ball by then. We had 9 runs for Darnold and 8 passes compared to 20 passes and 8 runs for Lance. But the big thing was not even the breakdown, because if you just sprinkled in some of those runs early, it would have looked way different. It was 3 drives in a row of no runs. And then 4th drive, you run it twice to start. What do you know? You score a TD. What? Oh, crazy. You get Lance some little layups to give him some confidence. All of a sudden, we're driving. All of a sudden, he's improvising and coming up with a great little play out of the pocket. Where he almost passed the line of scrimmage and threw it to Snead for the first down. It was a beautiful play. Where JT O'Sullivan said the Niners haven't had improvisation like this for years. He said, except for maybe a little bit by Purdy last year. So, I mean, anyone who wants to say it was all negative, and that's the whole thing about Lance. It's never been all negative. There's always been flashes of brilliance in every game he's played. It's just there's too much other stuff and there's too much inconsistency that he needs to clean up. So I hope he gets a chance to, but so far it hasn't really looked like it. But I was just going to say some of my titles this week that can give you a little idea of my headspace, if you will, was Raiders won their Super Bowl yesterday versus 49ers. That was obviously from Monday. Lance needs first team reps for a fair evaluation versus Purdy. So that still hasn't happened. Operation prop up Purdy, full steam ahead, because I do feel like Kyle is propping up Purdy, and it may work out if he ends up, like I said, playing like 2023 or 2022 in 2023, then I can kind of understand it. But if he continues to look like he has, we're going to really regret just handing him all these first team reps. I said Purdy gets starting job over Lance and Darnold. That's kind of matter of fact. Propped up Purdy, gifted 49ers QB job, because the other day, basically Kyle said Purdy would have to melt in practice for him not to be starting week 1. But I'm saying he's kind of melting in practice, I mean,
I think that's a little harsh to say he's melting in practice. I mean, he absolutely torched the number 1 D in red zone drills the other day as well. So he
did it twice in camp that I saw too. I don't. But what's the good of red zone drills if you don't get to the red zone, Nick?
True, but then at the end of the day, you've got to score points. That's the ultimate aim of any offense: score points. And it's one thing that we have struggled with quite a bit in recent years, where we've gotten into the red zone and we haven't come away with touchdowns. So we'll see. You can make a statistic look any way you want it to look at the end of the day.
Yeah,
it all comes down to how it works out in the season.
Another one I said was Shanahan's legacy on the horizon. Can he win a Super Bowl? Because I think we're getting to that point. And I said Kyle sabotaged Lance on Sunday in Raiders game. And a lot of people got mad at me saying that he sabotaged Lance. But I'm like, look, man, you've got this second string O-line that's trash. Let's just call it what it is. It is trash. We have no depth on the O-line at all. And it's something that a lot of us have been seeing coming for a long time, too, when we were already concerned about McKivitz taking McGlinchey's job. But then we're also concerned, like, McKivitz was our best other tackle. And you got Jalen Moore, who's never proved a thing. Matt Pryor, who's you're pulling in off the street. And, Leroy Watson, who, I think he could develop in time. He's a converted tight end, but, I don't think he's ready this year. And you're just like, oh, this will be fine. This will be fine. Now, all of a sudden, they're bringing all these tackles to try out. It's like, you guys should have been doing this a long time ago. We should have maybe drafted a tackle or signed somebody or traded for somebody. It's just frustrating. So, but the bottom line is, like, you have this bad O-line and then you don't run it. And that to me is like malpractice. And people are like, oh, it's sabotage. I'm like, it's either sabotage or it's Kyle was inept. So you take your pick. That's where I am on it. And I'm still a big Shanna fan. I've come to this conclusion, like, that with quarterbacks is an issue for him, a blind spot. And I was saying third round running backs, but now I'm just saying all third round picks not named Fred have been really, really disappointing for this team. And I'm not saying Moody and Latu will continue to be, but so far Moody and Latu are disappointing as well. So I have hope for them for sure. But, and then people say, oh, well, why would this doesn't make no sense. Why would he sabotage Lance? I'm like, it doesn't make sense. I'm not saying it makes sense, but it's what I'm seeing. It's what my opinion is. And then the yesterday, somebody had a great point. He's like, yeah, he also sabotaged Lance last year when he kept running him in between tackles. I'm like, perfect. Kyle is a repeat offender Lance sabotager, because I feel like that is,
I wouldn't go as far as to say he's sabotaging him. I must be honest. At the end of the day, if he's going to be sabotaging someone like that, he's ultimately only going to be costing himself a job. So I don't think he's going to be sabotaging it. I don't think there's any elements of being deliberate about any of all of this.
I think he's in the doghouse. I think a lot of it, I think part of it had to do with going to see Jeff Christensen and Pat Mahomes to improve his mechanics. And it wasn't Kyle's guy. Kyle set him up with John Beck and Scangarello. And now all of a sudden he's looking better, which makes Kyle look bad for not having someone help him do it 2 years ago. It seems like he's in the doghouse. And the big difference now is, like, unlike Ayuk was the starter. He had plenty of chances to redeem himself. Lance is only going to have a chance to redeem himself if Purdy gets injured or if Purdy struggles. And I'm not saying Lance is our best quarterback, but I just don't want our best quarterback to have to wait for another quarterback to get injured or flame out for them to hit the field. Because last year, Purdy was arguably our best quarterback, and we needed 2 QBs for him to see the field. I don't think that's right. I think that was a mistake.
True, but you can't really compare a wide receiver to a quarterback. And wide receiver on any given play, you could potentially have up to 4 wide receivers on the field. You still only got 1 quarterback.
There you go.
So I think it's a bit of an unfair comparison.
That's fine. That's fair. I mean, I just think it's the way Kyle is. I think he had Pettis in the doghouse. Most of the guys that go in the doghouse never make it out. But Ayuk is the one shining example of somebody who went in the doghouse and came out the other side, and now they're shining. But there was an interview with a guy who'd worked with Kyle. He said he's very quick to make decisions, and he's very short-sighted, short-term in his thinking. And once you're in it, it's really hard to get out. And that's what it feels like to me here. Dave McNiner in the house. McNuevo, welcome. He said, "What up, Nick? Let's go Niners." Laura Cat is back. She says, "Good afternoon to David." Everybody's saying hi, Randy. Let's see. Oh, we got Travis Howard in the house. If we get stomped by the Steelers week 1, then we have to deal with their fans at work all year. Oh, I'm sorry if you work with Steelers, and maybe you're in the Pittsburgh area there, Travis, I'm guessing. Yeah. Well, should we talk a little bit about the Steelers week 1? It's going to be a good segue too into a title from my next show today. But what are your thoughts about the Steelers week 1?
Steelers week 1. Paul and I, when we were going through our far too early predictions a couple of months back now, I had us losing to the Steelers.
Yeah,
I did.
But
we start slow. We just always start slow. And I'm even more thinking that now that the starters are being held out as much as they are, if they're not going to play again the week coming up, I can't see anything more than the starting slow again. I think if we're lucky, we grind out a win, but the Steelers are looking fairly tidy. Pickens is looking up. Kenny Pickett's not too bad. He did better than I thought he would. They've got a fairly decent D. They've got Watt coming in, rushing from the linebacker spot. They've got a good team. If if we can grind out a win, I'll be really, really happy. But I'm still looking at that as a loss, if I'm being honest. But I'm still thinking along the lines of it's not how you start a season, it's how you end. The last thing I want is the Niners to be firing on all cylinders week one. Any team that's firing at all cylinders week one, they flame out by 6, 7, 8. They're done. That's the end of their season because they've given it all already. I don't want to see them giving it all in the first few weeks. They have to time it so that they are really going at it once we get into the new year, because that's when the real football's played. I really couldn't care less about winning with style in week one. It would grind out a win, great. Even if we lose, it's not the end of the world. It's how you finish the season. It's how you go off and rattle off 7, 8 wins in a row. I mean, hell, that's how the Seahawks ended up in the playoffs, and they weren't a great team last year. I don't think they had to rely on the Detroit Lions beating Green Bay to get them in, but they rattled off the wins and they got themselves into the playoffs. And that's all I care about is towards the end. Are we playing well at the end? And we just need that progression to run through the season.
Part of that was of the Seahawks, winning out was they played some really terrible quarterbacks. It was like 5 or 6 in a row.
They did.
After they played us, it was like, you had the murderers row of really tough players. That was like, I don't know what you call it. Parking ticket row or something, like shoplifting row. But yeah, no doubt about it. Now, Steelers week one, I agree. Yeah, they're 15-1 in their last 16 opening days. They're as good in opening days as we are bad at starting the beginning of the season. So that doesn't bode well. Like you said, TJ Watt, he's a monster. I mean, he is. I mean, I'm going to say almost as good as Nick Bosa. I think, only with Homer glasses. Maybe there's probably more people out there that still like Bosa, maybe a little better, but it's pretty close. Bosa, Myles Garrett, Micah Parsons, these guys are all in that same top 4 defenders conversation. Parsons probably isn't the edge that the other 3 are, but he's got that linebacker versatility and speed that none of the other 3 have. Probably not the power, but nonetheless, I think they're all in that conversation. So you got that guy, and then you got Alex Highsmith, who just had 14.5 sacks last year and just got a $17 million contract at the time, 10th highest edge in the NFL. I think 1 or 2 have gone since then. So he's still like top 11 or 12 in the NFL. I think Nwosu from the Seahawks, he might have gotten a shorter 3-year contract instead of 4 and maybe like $1 million more. So Nwosu might have edged him out. So he's probably, Highsmith's probably 11th now in the NFL, but still, essentially a top 10 edge pay scale. So you got one of those guys pretty much every down you can assume is going to be coming against Colton McKivitz in his first ever NFL start at a right tackle. And, and obviously Pittsburgh going to be really loud. We travel really well, but, we're not going to take it over like SoFi, which is where Colton had a start in 2021 when we were just about to get in week 18 to get into the playoffs. He was filling in for Trent Williams there. And then he also filled in for Trent in week 4 of 2022, also against the Rams, but this time at Levi's, which is even less hostile, obviously. I mean, there's almost no Rams traveling fans there. So the difference between those 2 venues and whatever they're calling Heinz Field these days, it's going to be remarkably different. And so, keep in mind, like our 2 quarterback UCL injuries came off the right edge, in hostile environments where they couldn't maybe hear the tackle scream when they got beat, and they both got hit in the arm, whether it was Nick Mullins or Brock Purdy, eerily similar with DeMarcus Lawrence and Hassan Reddick coming off the right edges in hostile environments to do that. I'm not predicting that, but I'm just saying I am predicting it's going to be a rough day for whoever starts a quarterback for the 49ers in Pittsburgh.
It's going to be a really long day. It is. It's going to be a long day. I think it's going to start rough. I think we could see a really rough first quarter. I'm just hoping it improves and it doesn't stay rough or gets worse. Just want to see something moving forward. Like I say, I'm not seeing a win from this game.
And I'm not there to make a prediction yet, but I mean, I definitely could see a loss. I'm not saying it's a loss yet, but I need to see more before I make a firm prediction. But yeah, I can see why you would say that for sure, Nick. One thing that would really have helped us in Pittsburgh, in my opinion, there's this really big tight end out of Georgia, and his name is Darnell Washington. and he went 6 picks after we picked Jair Brown. And I'm not saying we should have used the Jair Brown pick on him, but right now, as I mentioned earlier, Moody and Latu not looking so hot. I guarantee you, if we had packaged their picks, we could have moved up and gotten Darnell Washington. And this guy is 6'8". He's a monster on the blocking sled. He's got soft hands. He's not a really great route runner. He's not fast or anything, but he does seem like he could become a pretty monstrous tight end, but certainly could be a right tackle's best friend. And maybe Latu can do that. I just feel like with Latu at this point, you're telegraphing the play, where there's just no chance you can throw him a ball right now in a regular season game based on what we've seen. So it means it has to be a run. But anything that can free up Kittle, so it's not Kittle there helping McKivitz, I think would be really helpful. So Kittle could actually maybe be in the pattern. Obviously, run game is going to help, and short passing, misdirection, reverses, pitches, things like that can help with a aggressive pass rush. But we're going to need all the help we can get in Pittsburgh, I think, no doubt. Oh, and then I guess this brings up one other segue, which is, like I've been saying all along, I'm not that worried about Bosa, being out, because Bosa stays in shape, and he only needs a few weeks probably to get ramped up for the regular season. You just got to put those pads on and get the calluses built up a little bit. So I'm not worried about Bosa being out for Bosa, but I am now thinking about it, worried about Bosa being out for McKivitz, because it would really help McKivitz to have been going up against Bosa all through camp to really help him improve, to be ready for TJ Watt and Highsmith week 1. And that was the side of it I wasn't really thinking of until like yesterday, my last show. I thought of it right as like my son was coming in, I had to end the show. But and so that's why my next show for today, I was calling with the Mean the Dream. I was saying time to worry about Bosa's contract, because for a while now I've been saying I'm not worried, but now that's starting to concern me too.
I mean, as far as the actual contract, it'll get signed. We all know that Bosa's working out. He's going to be probably working harder on his own than he ever probably could do with the team. The angle of how he would help improve McKivitz, that is a worry, because there is no better preparation for an NFL season for a tackle than going up against Nick Bosa. I mean, you look at Trent Williams. Trent Williams, I said it in the press himself, he loves going against the guy because it makes him better. And he's the best tackle in the league. And when the best tackle in the league is saying that, you want your guy who's coming in to shore up the other side of the offensive line going up against it as well, because, like I said, iron sharpens iron.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, I mean, and it'd be one thing if we had somebody else on the roster kind of like him, but we don't. I mean, it's like Cleveland Farrell, Drake Jackson, who's been injured quite a bit in camp. Robert Beal has started to shine a little bit recently. Austin Bryant, but yeah, there's no like Alex Highsmith on our D line either, unfortunately. So we're like several notches down for everybody else that Trent Williams and McKivitz has been going up against. So again, just one more reason. Well, it's not just how good those guys are. It's what a big gap there is between that and what we've been facing all offseason. Randy had a few things here. He said, sadly, I think that we know that because Trey won't throw the ball when he's supposed to. I mean, again, that was one game on Sunday. It didn't look like what he's looked like most of the time we've seen Trey Lance. I think you're fooling yourself if you think that's what Trey Lance is or all he can be, especially with better protection and better weapons. But that's what it looked like Sunday. I'll give you that, Randy. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and blow smoke and tell you that it looked good. It didn't, but I think there are a lot of good reasons why it looked bad, including no run plays in the first 3 drives. We are a run first team, and run fakes don't work when you don't run it. And people are like, oh, run fakes work if you don't run well. That's right. If you run the ball and it doesn't go well, you can still run the run fake, but you can't run it if you don't run it at all. That's the trick. That is the thing that people seem to miss. So anyway, and then he said that's why his opinion on that play, why he didn't throw option on that play. He ran up the middle. Yeah, so Randy, it's an option. The option is, when Lance got hurt, one time he handed it to Devo and he got like 50 yards. Next time it was Ray, and Ray was covered, and so Lance kept it. And so that's the option. You hand it to the running back or you run it up the middle. So I don't think a 50-50 option of running up the middle is a good idea with your starting QB especially if he's not like built like Josh Allen or even Jalen Hurts runs quite a bit up the middle, but he's like the same size of Trey Lance, except for instead of 6'4", he's like 6'1", so he's a lot more compact and he's built a lot differently. He squats 600 pounds plus. Different. It's not apples to apples to a tall, thinner guy. And what happened with Lance was he went up against linebackers and he got pushed backwards because he's not, he's too tall and thin to be running up the middle that way. He's not a fullback. And that's what Kyle treated him like. And that's why I said Kyle sabotaged him there. There were too many designed runs and too many options that were going to end up as runs half the time, or it just depends on how the defense plays it. They could make it so you run up the middle all the time on those options if they want to. So, I mean, it's really up to the D. So hurt himself, throw the damn ball. All right. Lance didn't call the plays. That's what I'll say when people say that. It was Kyle who called them. Lance could have slid. I'll say that, or he could have been tackled differently, and hopefully he'll learn better to do that. But I'm not going to blame Lance 100% for his injury. I think it was more on Kyle. But Nick, that's a lot. Feel free to dissect anywhere you like.
I'm not. I don't think you can blame Kyle for an injury. I don't think you can blame any coach for any injury at any given point. These things happen. They're freaks. It's a contact sport. Injuries are going to happen. It's probably the most brutal contact sport around. I'm lucky I've been able to play American football and rugby. These are the two most brutal contact sports you can play. I can tell you, American football is so much harder, even though in rugby you don't have the pads. There are a lot more rules surrounding how you tackle and what happens in between and what's illegal and illegal. And that's bred into you from about 6 years old. So it is absolutely a far more brutal sport. I don't think you can blame anyone for an injury like that. It's just going to happen.
There you go. And East Coast, all right, so we'll agree to disagree on that. I mean, that's fine. That's important. I don't want you here to say yes all the time. That's for sure. And it makes for a more interesting show if we have disagreements. And so I value your opinion, Nick, always, even if I don't agree with it. East Coast Niner says, I think we need to start strong because of the schedule. Yeah, there's a lot of reasons why we need to start strong. The schedule, we have minus 20 rest days on the season. There are 3 teams that are plus 12, the Jets, Bears, and I always forget the third one. But bottom line, 3 teams with 32 more rest days than us in a 4.5-month season. It's a huge disadvantage for us. We travel the second most travel miles, and we have play 4 teams coming off of buys. And yes, the schedule is actually a lot tougher than last year, at least on paper. Before the season starts, it looks tougher than it was last year. You always have to wait to see how things play out, but that's the way it's looking. We also have to start fast because the Eagles probably will, and the Cowboys probably will. We've got some tough competition in the top of the NFC, and Laura Cat said, it's good about how you finish the season. And I mean, I'd rather finish the season hot, healthy, and rested than maybe with the number 1 seed, but I'd love if you could do both somehow. I mean, that'd be
awesome if you could do both. But you don't have to finish as number 1 seed to get into the playoffs. You only have to win your division. Now, we are lucky in that we have 2 bum teams in our division. I'm just going to say this right here, right now.
Cards and Rams.
The games against the Cardinals and the Rams, they're gimmies. If we don't come out of there with 4 wins, we don't deserve to be in the playoffs. So that's 4 straight away. So we're plus 4. I would say that we are going to get at least 1 win out of the Seahawks. I would be miffed if we don't have 2, but there is a chance we could potentially lose the one up at CenturyLink
in Seattle.
Not the end of the world. So there's 5 wins from our 6 divisional games. We only have to win our division, and we've automatically avoided having to play too much in the wild cards. We just
but it's the NFC Championship in Philadelphia or Dallas, which are the 2 places where our UCL injuries happened. So literally, I mean, and so there is. I get it. There's no perfect scenario other than hot, healthy, rested, and the number 1 seed. And if I had to pick one, I want hot, healthy, rested. You're right, because you got to win those games to get to the NFC Championship. So it doesn't do any good if you got home field advantage if you don't even get to your home field advantage game. So I get that too, Nick. So yeah. And
on the bright side, we probably shouldn't be playing at MetLife, which is a good one. I hate that stadium with a passion.
Yeah, no doubt about it. But at least they changed the turf, so hopefully it'll be a little bit better now. Explicit Man says, I see Brock throwing 2 pick 6 in week 1. Oh, please no.
Oh
I
man,
mean,
I
I'm
hope you're
not
wrong.
rooting. People think I'm rooting against Brock because I like Lance, and I'm not. I want all our QBs to be the best they can be. I just want whoever wins to be because they were just better than the ones who drove them to be the best. So, I don't want to see that because also I don't think Kyle will pull Purdy right away either if he plays poorly. Because first of all, he's invested in Purdy, and it's like hard to go back to Purdy if you pull him once. That's pretty much it. You got to make sure you're running with whoever's next for good. But also, like because of our slow starts in the past, I think people will excuse a slow start, even though it could just be, it could be more endemic than that. It could be something that'll persist through the season. But that's the thing about slow starts. There's no guarantee that just because you start slow, you're going to turn it on in the second half, right? That is not a guarantee. So I don't know. We'll see. Ouch. Few QBs threw interception in the preseason. Why would Brock throw 2? Well, because he's throwing like 1 or 2 every practice, Randy. That's why.
Oh, then we'll
And
just have to see. There's a
yeah,
lot of things that happen in practice that don't necessarily happen in games. Look at a couple of years ago, when I was it one-on-ones, Marquise Goodwin against Sherm. I mean, Goodwin torched him all preseason long. Torched him, absolutely torched him. People were slamming him. Oh, Sherm's done. Sherm's this. Sherm's that. And then Richard Sherman goes to the Pro Bowl.
Yeah, true.
Yeah, these are just one-on-ones. I think there was a fantastic tweet actually earlier this week from JJ Watt, where people he basically goes and calls out people for putting out videos of single one-on-ones, and it's like you cannot take anything like that individually and make some grand conclusion from it, because ultimately one-on-ones is where these players are honing their craft and they're trying out new things. So you don't know what they were doing. He might have been trying something new, and that's why he got torched, or why we did something wrong. He'd been told maybe to angle his arm ever so slightly differently, trying to work on a mechanic. We don't know what's happening behind the scenes in that respect. We'll have a much better idea week 1. That's why I try not to read too much into don't get me wrong, losing to the Raiders in the way we did hurt like hell. It hurt like hell playing. I know they're no longer Bay Area or anything like that, but we will always view them as that
Little brother
from across the bay. Yeah, exactly. Little brother that couldn't win as much as we can.
Yeah. Well, and that's why I said Raiders won their Super Bowl Sunday.
Exactly.
That's why I said
it's only preseason.
Oh, sorry, go ahead. Yeah, no, and that's why I said they won their Super Bowl, because they know they're not going to beat any teams like us in the regular season. So they went all out. They game planned. They did everything they could to make sure they won that game, and they did. Good for you. Congrats. Congrats on probably barely winning 5 this season would be my guess for them, but we'll see. Dan McNair says bye week for the number 1 seed will help rested factor. Yeah, that's true. That's true. But it's still I don't know if it helps for the healthy part. that's when a lot of times health doesn't come back in a week, but it helps. Everything helps. So.
But then you can always look at it as having the number 1 seed and having that week off takes away momentum. So it all depends on your point of view. It all depends on how you're looking at something. It all depends on your own mindset. So,
yeah, no doubt about it. Great One says they will excuse anything as long as it's not Trey. And I'm definitely getting that feeling, like where it's like, oh, Trey almost threw 2 interceptions in the Raiders game. It's like Purdy's throwing real interceptions and pick 6s in practice, which is basically the same thing. Like, but I don't mind that, and the sacks and the can't hit a deep ball. It's just practice, doesn't matter. But yeah, anyway, it just it frustrates me a little bit. Oh, Randy's back. We have a game 4 days apart. I guess we play the Chargers on Thursday. Then is that right? 1, 2, 3.
Is that preseason, or was he talking about in season?
Oh, maybe it's in season. I think maybe he's talking about the Giants game.
Yeah, I know we've got a real short rest 1 week at least. I can't remember in between which 2 it is.
Yeah, because the Chargers are Friday. The Rams, the Giants are the 21st. Yeah, we play the Rams the 17th and the Giants the 21st. That was it. Our home opener on 4 days rest. How's that? Great. Thanks, scheduling gods. Appreciate
It
that.
is
And
what it
the
is.
Giants are not going to be easy either.
No, they're
They got
looking
Darren
better than I
Waller.
thought.
They got Saquon. Danny Dimes. Everybody was mean on Danny Dimes, but he didn't have much help last season. Now he's got a lot more help. And Dayball's a good coach, good OC at least. That's a concern for me for sure. And then Cowboys week 5. That's not going to be easy by any stretch. I think I was saying for a while I thought they might be better than I still think they might be better than the Eagles, but I was thinking likely better than the Eagles. Now I'm thinking just could be, but the Eagles picked up Miles Jack and Zach Cunningham linebackers, and that was one of the areas where they let everybody go during the offseason. And they'd picked up some guys to be their linebackers, but Miles Jack is pretty good, or at least he was last I knew. And Zach Cunningham, I think, is pretty good too. So that's a little bit
not bad.
Scary.
On the bright side, they also play each other twice, so hopefully they'll knock several shades of expletives out of each other in the meantime.
Yeah, and Dak owns the Eagles. Dak has ownage on the Eagles like we have on the Rams. So hopefully that continues. And getting Hargrave is huge. I think Hargrave, I've been saying, could be Charles Haley 2.0, but in a good way, right? Like how Charles Haley killed us.
Worked for us for once.
for the Cowboys in the 90s. I think Hargrave could be an Eagle killer for us.
Hargrave was big. I mean, Hargrave was the number one free agent available during the offseason. I don't believe that Lamar Jackson was ever truly free.
Deron Payne was up there, but he stayed. He didn't actually move. But he was franchise tagged, wasn't he? But I think you could say tomato. I think Deron Payne's a better balanced defensive tackle, but Hargrave's the better pass rusher. So, those two, either one of those two, depending how you look at it. I guess you could look at the money side, which I think Hargrave won. So,
for sure. That man got paid.
Yeah. Randy says I'm trying to work off. Good luck, my friend.
All I'm going to say, Randy, is I've already done my work for the day. I have put my out of office reply on. I'm off for the long weekend. It's great. The one bonus, I suppose, of being somewhat in the future for you than you guys.
Jealous. A few more hours. The bye week in the middle helps. Yeah, that's true. It's pretty rare that we've had a bye week in the middle of the season. We've had a lot of early buys since Shanny's been our coach, the Shanna Lynch experience. So that definitely should help some, no doubt about it.
I always felt that the league missed a massive trick. When they expanded the season to 17 games, they should have actually made it a 19-week season and put 2 bye weeks in. It's easy enough to do and keep the amount of football on running throughout the season would have made things better, would have made things safer for the players. If you want to protect your product, which is ultimately what the league is doing, why not protect your players? That made sense to me. Why expand the season and then give them more chance of getting hurt?
Money. It's because that's lip service about keeping them safe.
It never would have cost them anything. If anything, they'd have ended up with 18 weeks of football, not 17 weeks of football. So 19 weeks of football, not 18 weeks of football.
Well, it's not the number of weeks; it's the number of games. It's the number of games.
It would have been the same, and that would have been the same amount of games. Just one extra week's rest for all the players.
Yeah, but then you're starting the season a week earlier or a week later when the weather's bad. I don't know. That's interesting. That's a good point for sure. So obviously we've beat the QB position to a pulp. I think
as Niners fans, we do that every season anyway. We certainly have done for the last 5-6 years.
Yeah. Should we talk some more about some of the other positions as far as, there was quite a few surprises besides Lance in the Raiders game of players who looked good in camp who kind of fell on their face in the Raiders game. So I don't know if you had any that you were surprised at how they did versus what you were hearing or what.
Not particularly, because as I said, the only one I was really looking for from the Raiders game that made it interesting for me was who was going to be returning the kicks and the punts, especially after Ray went down. That was the only thing I was really interested in seeing. I wanted to know who was coming through, who are they going to give the job to. I think at that point it was the only starting job which wasn't really nailed in. And I thought he played. I thought he came on through quite well. I was actually quite impressed by him. By John, I thought he did. I was really happy. I'm going to be quite happy with him running forward. If anything, if he really shows out, it could put Ray's spot in a bit of jeopardy.
You're talking about Jameson?
Yeah,
he played well.
He did quite well.
If we could just not have the holds on the returns, that would be good. But yeah, he looked good. And I felt like Ronnie Bell did a good job as the gadget guy, other than obviously he had the one, pass from Brandon Allen that should have been a catch that ended up being intercepted. It was funny to see in that game. You have obviously the Trey Lance touchdown, quote unquote touchdown pass that should have been an interception. And then Brandon Allen throws one that should have been a catch, ends up being an interception. It just shows how box scores can be misleading, people. Don't be a box score scout, because you will not know what really happened if you don't watch the game and watch the film from the game. It's important. I was really disappointed in Kinlaw because he had an amazing camp. I would say outside of like Ayuk and Lance, like Kinlaw was one of the top performers in camp in the 9 practices I attended. And he did poorly. So did Isaiah Oliver. Womack too. Don't say anything to Lee. Don't tell Lee. But Womack, struggled a little bit. But, with the defenders, I'm not that worried about it, because just like I'm not that worried about Trey Lance struggling with a crummy O-line and second team weapons that are, I'm not going to disparage them, but they were not that good. They didn't get a lot of separation, or when they did funny things that messed up timing by stutter stepping and things like that. But with the defense, we were just talking about Hargrave, what a big difference maker we think he's going to be. No Armstead, no Fred, no Dre, no Lenore, no Charvarius Ward, no Huff, no Gibson. So I think all those guys will look better with better guys around them, and obviously with more pass rush, makes everyone look better. So I'm not that worried about it. I think Kinlaw, if he can stay healthy, because he's been really healthy all camp, he can stay healthy. I think he'll be one of our better, or if not our best, depth piece on the D-line so far from what I've seen. So either him or like Cleveland Farrell if Drake Jackson holds on to the starting role. So, and then tight end, obviously Latu is a huge disappointment.
That was a concern. I can't remember which tight end it was.
The 3rd round draft pick. It's not off the table at this point.
Was it? You had Latu's drop. I can't remember who it was. Watson. He by far the worst performance on the field. In a general bad performance, Watson stood out as by far the worst player on that field. You've got Latu makes a decent catch finally, then he fumbles it, and you've just got Watson walking away from the ball on the floor like, dude, play the whistle, jump, get down on that ball, and then of course Raiders pick it up and go on. They score a touchdown from that. I thought he was abysmal at best, and there was a pass outside the numbers from Brandon Allen towards the end of the game to him as well, and he made a decent high point catch. Then he showed completely no awareness in any way, shape, or form. And despite being 3 yards in field, manages to step out of bounds. Now, if you're an NFL wide receiver, there's no excuse in that point. You're not on the sideline. He had more than enough space to get 2 feet down and get them down quickly. He was particularly bad. I was actually quite surprised he still had a job the next day. But then he's not going to make the 53 anyway, even if he played well, I dare say. Ronnie Bell like you said, he was really up and down because he made some great plays and he made some real bad plays too. But I think I was quite surprised as well that none of the running backs really put down none of them really put down a marker. After Mitchell's injury again, I was sort of thinking, well, actually, no, Jordan Mason, you've got a chance here, mate. You could put a stamp down and go and get that, with that RB2 job. One sewn in, you're not touching CMC, and nobody will for several years yet. But he had an opportunity in that game. And I felt like a bit of a missed opportunity for him and for TDP. I don't think they played particularly badly, but they didn't really push forward like I was expecting them to against a load of backups. I would like to have seen more from them from there, but Hey.
Yeah. Yeah, no, there's definitely some frustrating stuff to see. I just don't feel like Charlie Warner's any good. Latu's no good. Dwelly had the nice catch, but he can't block. A TDP was shining all through camp, and he couldn't pass block, and his running was okay. Maybe I don't know. It just and that just shows like the running in camp. There's no tackling, so it's really hard to tell how well they're really running. Like, oh, they're running hard, and it's like, well, are they? They're running hard through air tackles. So.
Yeah. Emiliano has just corrected me. He is right. It's Martin, not Watson. My apologies.
There you go. Yeah, Tay Martin. Yeah, no doubt about it. Yeah, he was probably not going to make the team. Real quick, just want to call out Nancy Cameron in the house. Thanks for joining, Nancy. She says a little bit. Said maybe more than a little bit. Yeah, as far as wide receivers go, I feel like it's obviously you got Debo, you got Ayuk, you got Jennings. They're locks. I did have Ray as number 4 before, and now I really feel like that's Chris Conley. I feel like he's been the best in camp. He was good in the game. He had that great, the laser that Lance threw about 20 yards on a frozen rope to him. I really love that play. Lance's best throw on Sunday. So yeah, Conley, and then Tay Martin's played well in camp. But I think Danny Gray probably has a leg up because he's a 3rd-round draft pick versus undrafted. And obviously Ronnie Bell we drafted, even though it's 7th round. I think that counts. And he's, like you said, he's been up and down. At least he's been up. And
yes, and he got a lot of targets.
He was involved actually done quite pretty heavily. Well. There was a practice where he had the 2 best catches in practice. Willie Snead. He had the nice one from Lance that I was talking about, where Lance broke out of the pocket to the right, almost crossed the line of scrimmage and jumped past to him, kind of backwards across his body. So yeah, but I think it's like Conley. I guess I'll go Gray, Bell. Maybe Willie sneaks in there because he's a vet. I don't know.
It'd be interesting to see how many special team snaps each of them play, because that could end up deciding whether or not they sneak onto the roster for their special teams ability, or whether we just that we pop them into the practice squads. And if they're not getting any reps on special teams and they're not doing anything on offense, well, you're just not going to see them at all. They're going to be off into the ether, ready for another camp next year.
No doubt. Someone had an incredible nickname for Latu. I saw dropped you. I don't know if that's the one. But yeah, Latu's been very disappointing. And are you worried about Jake Moody at all? Or, I mean, because he looked good in camp, but I guess he struggled yesterday in practice again too. So starting to look like
we'd have to wait and see. It is a wait and see situation. You cannot recreate that game time stuff. Someone did come up with a very interesting fact. Justin Tucker, in his first preseason, was 50%, 4 of 8.
Well, there you go. That's good news.
So
Justin Tucker was undrafted, so not as much pressure on him.
He went. He had an all right career, but then admittedly, you could be Robert Abreu, and you can go the other way, and you can end up without a job. So
for sure, hands down,
it can go either way.
I did get it wrong at practice. He didn't struggle. They actually, Brian Schneider, the special teams coordinator, actually worked on freezing him, because they froze him in the game with timeouts, or icing him. They iced him. So they practiced that in practice. I don't think it's the same thing, but they tried to make it the same thing, and he did fine. So hopefully that helps for sure. But yeah, I mean, I had Brian Peacock on a while back, and he said, Ted, he said kickers are like reverse running backs. And I was like, what do you mean? He said, yeah, if you think of all the best kickers of all time, like they're all in like their mid to late 30s, when they're in their heyday. And he's like, rookie kickers struggle very often to whether they're undrafted or drafted. The reason why there's so many undrafted kickers is just because there's just so many undrafted kickers that skews there aren't many kickers drafted in the third round compared to there's tons that are undrafted. So it's not like if you're undrafted, you have a higher likelihood of success. It just means there's so many that one of them has a higher likelihood, not any particular one. But so I thought it was an interesting point because obviously running backs, they're typically best in their first contract. A lot of people feel like you don't even ever want to give a running back a second contract unless they're like a CMC type where they can really receive and run routes and have great hands. So I thought that was an interesting analogy and does not exactly bode well for young Jake Moody. I mean, even if you think about Sebastian Janikowski, who was a first-round draft pick for the Raiders, it took him years to become a consistent kicker in the NFL.
True. I mean, the one thing you've got, though, at least with Moody, he has kicked in some big games. He's kicked in some really big games in front of some big crowds for Michigan. So, yeah. It didn't look great. That second one was abysmal. I had flashbacks to that kick from Monday Night Football against the Seahawks, with he who shall not be named, who ruined my very first ever game live at Levi Stadium. Thanks, mate. But
Kyle, or not Kyle? Is it Kyle? I won't say his whole name.
Please don't.
I called him Kaufman instead of McLaughlin.
I ruined my first day. That was the first time I'd ever gone to Levi. 6,000 miles I traveled for that.
Seahawks game 2019 October. It was Halloween, week 10, Halloween. I was there. I go to most of the Seahawks home games.
I was there for that one. That was my first one. I was up in the 402. I was
way up.
right at the very front of 402. I was.
Oh, good.
Wow. I suppose if you're going to see a loss as your first game, it might as well be an exciting overtime loss, even if it was to the Sea Chickens.
There you go. So for tight ends, who do you like out of our tight ends? I mean, obviously you're going to keep Kittle. What do you think about?
Dwelly's a weird one because I keep expecting him to push on and he just never does. He drops a lot. He does seem to get flagged more than the other tight ends do. I'm at a point where I prefer Charlie Warner to Ross Dwelly. I think he's a more polished blocker. He may not be as good a receiving tight end as Dwelly, but he doesn't draw as many fouls. That could be potentially where you slot Warner in as the blocking tight end alongside McKivitz. Maybe if you run some of those old two tight end sets where you line up Warner on the right side, and you've got Kittle out to be the free receiving tight end off the other side, maybe. After that, I thought a few of the vets did okay on the weekend. They seem to increase their stock quite nicely. But God, you never seem to know with Kyle Shanahan, really, do you? With tight ends, like I said, the only lock is George Kittle, realistically, at the moment.
I think Braden Willis is too.
Yeah, I wouldn't surprise.
I think Braden Willis is a lock, and I think it's really going to be Braden Willis. And I think Latu is just from his draft pick, and he is a good blocker and he is a good route runner. So I think they're going to hope that his hands improve. And I think it's going to be pick one between Warner and Dwelly. And I would have thought Warner, but I think Latu's the blocker. And Warner's not a good receiver either. He has maybe one camp.
No,
he had maybe one catch in the 9 camp days I went to. So, I mean, not as many drops either, but, because that's the thing is Latu gets so open, he gets targeted more. But I think that's what it's going to be. I think it's going to be, I'm going to go with Kittle, Braden Willis, Latu, and Dwelly. Can't get rid of Dwelly. Peanut butter and Dwelly is too sticky.
Peanut butter Dwelly time.
Yeah, Ross the boss.
He has had some good games.
I was hoping we would get something better. Like I said, I wanted Darnell Washington, and maybe he won't turn out to be anything, but the guy's a physical specimen. He's a monster. Do you have a Supreme? Oh, wait, real quick. Emiliano was saying Jimmy had 0% rating his first preseason game after surgery. This was before the Super Bowl season, but after a huge contract, and no one gave it. But Trey is about to have 150 QB rating every time. Odd. Yeah, no. It's like we said. It's sort of like nobody minds if Purdy does it, but if Trey does it, everybody has a hissy fit about it. I think people just know that if you slander Trey or even say true things that are bad about him, the Trey stands will react, will click, will come running. And so we're just an easy target now for engagement.
People know. I mean, the Niners, especially on social media, our fan base are very, very active, and we are very, very vocal. And that works for and against us sometimes. In the instance of the quarterback, I think it's working against us.
Yeah, no doubt about it. Stevo says, Dwelly taking his shot, thought he was a goner. Yeah, I mean, Dwelly, that TD goes a long way, man. Those are hard to catch off a deflection like that. And, I think that might have bought him a little more time at the very least.
Yeah, at least he's switched on. At least he's playing the whistle. He's seeing it through to the end. He's always watching and seeing where the ball is because you never know what's going to happen at the end of the day.
Oh, I know something we should talk about. So I talk a lot of people who did well in camp and fell on their face in the game. Let's talk about somebody who fell on their face all through camp, who I was very public about talking about. And besides the O-line, I mean, because I did talk about the O-line before the Raiders game too. I was very upfront during camp that our D is much deeper than our O-line or our weapons groups, right? I mean, after the top 5 O-linemen and the top 4 weapons, there's a huge drop-off. Even to Jennings and Juice, there's a big drop-off, but especially after them. And that was all around when people would say, well, Purdy's been going against the first team D. I'm like, well, Purdy's got the first team O-line, the first team O-weapons, and Lance is going against the second team D that has Kinlaw, and he was wrecking shop against that second team O-line. And anyway, bottom line is, I was saying also, yeah, Purdy's going against the number 1 D quite a bit, but most of his receptions were actually against Ambry Thomas and AJ Parker. And I said during camp, those two look closer to off the team than first team, right? So, but Ambry Thomas came up big in the Raiders game. He had a great game, even to the point now where they're talking about maybe Ambry might bump Lenore inside, because now he had trouble at nickel, and Lenore was originally slated to be a nickel before he proved that he could play boundary. And so, if Oliver and Womack continue to struggle, I don't think Womack will. Here you go, Lee. Just make sure. El Presidente, don't come for me.
Sticking his good books.
But that's another option now, is basically, and it's like, and I was one of the reasons I was so frustrated seeing Ambry struggle, not only because he's a 3rd-round draft pick, but because he was a man cover specialist coming out of Michigan, and it seemed like a natural fit with Steve Wilks. If we're blitzing a lot, that the back end behind the blitz is going to have to do a lot of man coverage, then maybe Ambry might have a fighting chance to do a little bit better than he did in, say, Sala or D'Amico Ryan's systems. So anyway, I'd love to get your thought on Mr. Ambry or anyone else that you thought maybe struggled in camp and did well in the Raiders game.
I suppose being on this side of the pond, we haven't had a massive amount of access. There's literally only been what we've been able to pick up on Twitter, to be honest. It's the odd videos. So I haven't been able to really say that I have been massively impressed or disappointed by anyone through camp. But it's difficult to say anything other than Ambry was really good in that game. He certainly did it. He did himself all the favors necessary. And it gives us a good problem. And those are the problems you want to have. It's the problems that Carl's going to want to have, knowing that next man up is there. At least at that position, he seems to be there. That was really good to see, because he just dived, didn't he? His career seemed to be taking a complete nosedive, and it's sort of, okay, he's just going to whittle off. Maybe this is his reemergence. Is Steve Wilks working that magic, which is what we wanted. This is what we wanted him to do, is to work his magic with those defensive backs. We worked our way through with the previous defensive coordinators at various position groups, and we've gotten better on the way at each time. Now it's see if we can raise the level of those cornerbacks. It's a really good problem to have. If someone isn't going to perform well at the nickel, maybe they do put Lenore in there. But I think we'll just have to wait and see. I'm saying it a lot because for me, that's how it is. That's how I like to look at things.
There you go. Randy, great take here. My bold take is Kittle, Fumagalli, Willis, and we carry forward team Coletto. I don't know about Coletto. I think we're going to try and put him on the practice squad, but I totally forgot about Fumagalli. He had that great catch, by Lance in that touchdown drive. Lance's first completion was to Fumagalli. And I even tweeted out, I was like, Fumagalli! And he's had a pretty good camp. So, yeah, I'm revising my list. Randy, thank you for this. Yeah. You saved me from a fate worse than death. I'm going to say Kittle, Willis, Fumagalli, and then none of the incumbents. I'm going to say Latu just because of the draft pick, because of the third round pick, because he runs great routes and he blocks well. I think it's going to be Latu, and I think then which is what we thought might happen. Peanut butter and Dwelly is not so sticky, and Warner's worn thin. And
wouldn't surprise. The Coletto question is an interesting one, though.
Yeah,
because you
jack of all trades.
Our week one opponents. I don't know. I don't think they have signed a fullback yet. Of course, their rookie fullback retired even before playing a single down in the NFL. So I am concerned that the Steelers don't have a fullback right now. They drafted a rookie, or he may have been undrafted, but they got one rookie in. He was their only fullback on the roster, and my concern is that they may come for Coletto. I'm not 100% sure we would be able to stash him
on the PS.
That worries me because I do see Coletto as being the successor to Kyle, to Juice. I would be really worried about losing him if I'm being honest. It's a toughie. If there's anyone on the bubble, certainly offense, my concern would be losing Coletto, and I would put him on the 53.
I wonder if Coletto has played well enough. I didn't seem like it from what I saw, to where you would just trade Juice straight to the Steelers. And
no, I wouldn't trade Juice. No, hell no. I'm not trading anyone. I'm keeping both of them. Yeah,
because Juice has a $7 million cap hit the next 2 seasons. So this is after this season, we got to do something with him because we don't use him enough to justify a $7 million cap hit. He's made 5 average, but because we backloaded it, the next 2 years are 7 each. So we got to do something before 2024. I don't know, just something I was thinking about, trying to be creative, and not lose Coletto and maybe get a little something for Juice that way. Because
I wouldn't want. I would want at least 1 year of the two of them together. I would want Coletto living in Juice's pocket.
Yeah, you got to see it during real games, right? Yeah, you can't go off preseason. And yeah, you're right. You're right.
It's in the same way that Mike McGlinchey did when he joined the team, and he literally attached himself like a limpet to Joe, and he to learn as much as Carl. I would want Coletto doing the same to Carl Juszczyk. Like, right, teach me to do what you can do, because
You're right. But great take there about Fumagalli. I totally spaced on him, and he's been good. He's been, definitely better than Warner. I just don't know how his blocking is, but his receiving has been pretty good. So yeah, that's why I think you go Kittle, Fumagalli, Willis. It has to be Latu or Warner. If we agree on the first 3, then you can't stick with Dwelly because he can't block, and then you got. Unless Fumagalli is a better blocker than I'm aware of, which is possible, but I'm assuming that he is just a guy blocking and a pretty good guy receiving, which is then I think you gotta go Latu or Warner. And I think Latu's 3rd round draft pick that ices it. I think
picks it up.
Latu. Yeah, I'm gonna go with that. Coletto and Fisher, really great kids. Joey Fisher from Shepherd. Unfortunately, he hasn't really broken in, but it takes time. Probably take a year or 2 before he gets up to his NFL speed. So we'll see.
Yeah.
But it sounds like
you look at
Will
how.
Manning has been doing well in the O line, so that's good to hear. Who was just a rookie out of Hawaii.
Listen, I think I was probably more disappointed in that Dontari Poe didn't make a. Not Dontari Poe, Jason Poe.
Jason Poe, yeah.
Jason Poe. I was expecting more. I didn't think he would be as rough as he was. It's especially having been, practice squad player of the year last year. I was like, okay, could he make a push? Potentially, but it does seem that he's going to maybe spend another year on the practice squad.
Yeah, and Nick Zakelj, because he is actually a draft pick. At least Poe is undrafted, so that's whatever. But Zakelj is like a 4th or 5th round pick, if I recall correctly. So
yeah, somewhere
that's really disappointing for sure. East Coast Niner says, I want to see more Willis in the game tomorrow. Yeah, we might see a little more Willis. I think we'll see a lot more of the starters tomorrow. Especially if Purdy and all the starters start, then you would assume they would gradually ease back to, all scrubbed by the time Lance plays in the second half.
Yeah, it is. I mean, I just want. I'll be honest. After last week's game, I wanted them to scrap whatever the plan was and delay Darnold coming into the game.
Yeah, to give Lance a little more time because he had just started.
Even if it's just one drive. Even if it's just one drive, let him build on. He'd been a crap first half. He's going to be feeling down on himself, and he just started putting something together. Okay, give him the halftime, let him collect his thoughts, let him improve, let him go out on a high. Let him push forward, but
not Kyle. It's Kyle's plan is the best plan, and if you don't like it, then that's your fault. Sorry.
Yeah.
Thanks, Salty Cyclist. I appreciate it. Yeah, it's been a long time coming. I've been grinding on this since November of 2022. So, a lot of fun. And thanks for your help and everybody else who's helped me to hit 500. We'll have, as soon as I can figure out how to do it, it's probably a video on how to monetize, but I need to get the memberships for the channel going so that you can have like a cool little emoji to show that you're a member of TED Talks Ball. You, of course, get preferential treatment and some exclusive content. And then also super chats will be available too, in case I'm flooded with. I'm pretty good about reading chats right now, but I've had some shows recently where I just got out of control and I just could not keep up. Or if you have something that you want said that you don't think I'm going to say, pay me a few bucks, force my hand, twist my arm.
This is it.
Also,
I must be honest, with things like that, I have got the breaking point of a damp Kit Kat if you put money behind it.
There you go. Yeah, exactly. And, make sure everybody follows Nick at and Ludlam 84 on Twitter. Also, make sure you follow the 49er Faithful UK. This is their lovely flag back here behind me. El Presidente Lee Gallen, Paul Hope. He's away on Tenerife in the Canaries, but he should be back before too long. Hopefully not too sunburned. Hopefully he saw some good sights. I don't even know if they have topless beaches in the north. They had them in the 90s when I was there. That's for sure.
Oh, this is Europe, mate. There's plenty of topless beaches. It's
just in the UK. I just remember I was kind of like, "Oh, do you like topless beaches?" And I was like, most of those people you don't want to see topless. Turns out,
no, you don't.
Not like a bunch of supermodels, tooling around.
More like spaniel's ears.
Yeah. Spaniel's ears. That's good. I like it. O-line played. Yeah. Do they hang low? O-line played so poorly on Sunday. I was half expecting Alfredo to get some run just for the hell of it. Yeah, I always keep hoping we'll see some Alfredo Gutierrez, our international player from Mexico, but I get the feeling that's more of just a goodwill thing. Like they're just like, there you go, Alfredo, but he's never going to see any real time in a real game. I mean, I don't think he's ever been active for a game. So yeah,
no, I don't think he
has. You got to be active first. Right?
Oh, he has. It's a shame because there's been some decent athletes on that program down the years. I know there's been a couple of. There was one lad who used to play for England in the rugby. I can't remember his name. I think it was Wade. I think it was. I'm not sure. And he was the international player for the Bills. And I'd always hoped that he might get something because he was elusive. I hated the man with a passion because he played for England, obviously.
Right. Wales, that's like
I
oil and
never
water.
wanted the man to play well ever in a million years. But I always wanted to see how he might be able to do. But I don't think realistically, I don't think he had the stature to play in the NFL.
There you go. Makes sense. What else we got? So, I think we're coming up on an hour and a half here. I know, your missus is probably ready to have some snuggle time with Nick here.
That is very kind of you to say. I can't imagine anyone would allow me to have everything going on behind me and all the stuff you can't see. It is just me.
There you go. But I know you also have other things to do. It's getting late over in the UK. So we had talked about an hour and a half, but was there anything else like that you were wanting to talk about that I missed, or anything, pertinent, anything you want to talk about for the Broncos game?
No,
anything you want to
I
see?
think the only thing I want to see is improvement. That's it. I just want to see some improvement. I want to see. I'd like to see the starters play at least 2 drives. Somehow get the feeling that we won't. But as long as they get better, that's all I want to see. Just get better. Be better than the day before. That's all you can ask of anyone. So
brick by brick, stack those improvements.
That's it.
So, I mean, East Coast Niner says that he played in the Mexico blowout. So I was wrong about
that. They would have brought him in for that.
Yeah. No doubt about it. And what a blowout that was. Partially due to the 49ers training at Colorado Springs at 6,800 feet. Mm-hmm. And the Cards stayed at Glendale, Arizona, which is real close to sea level. And so in the second half, they really fell off. It's funny because they've, in the past, gone to Flagstaff, which is 6,000 feet, to train for Mile High games. And Mexico City is a full 2,000 feet higher than Mile High. And somehow they were like, oh, we're fine. Or maybe they just knew they were going to lose either way. And so they're just like, why bother with the inconvenience?
They've given up. They've given up. They're after that number 1 pick. Whether or not they keep it to go after Williams from the names are just going. Caleb Williams.
Williams.
He's going to be number 1 pick overall.
From
whether
USC.
They keep him or if they trade him for a ton of picks, I don't really want to see him in the West. Because you never know, he might be able to revitalize the Cardinals. But
yeah, absolutely. Well, we'll see. I love anybody who takes a big swing on a quarterback because most of them miss or they take a long time to develop. Just like when they took a big swing on Kyler Murray and they left Bosa for us. Thank you, Cardinals.
I'm so happy. Yeah, I think we all knew that was awesome. Like, yes, get in. Yes. They properly botched that.
How huge that is. All right, now just get him signed, Jetty and Parag. Make it happen. Let us stop worrying. As long as it happens by next week, I think we're fine. But ideally, like I said, as much time as we can get to, not only harden up Bosa's calluses, but McKivitz's calluses too. That's the one.
That's the bigger one. I say I'm not even remotely worried about Bosa's play. He's
not like Debo.
On. It's
not like Debo.
It's that the conditioning from McKivitz would really help. It really would.
There you go. So then anything, you guys have your normal show next Tuesday at 8 p.m. GMT, noon Pacific, Indeed. Right?
We are back and we will be taking absolutely no more breaks until after the Super Bowl. So that pretty much puts us on a 4-month run every Tuesday night, 8 p.m. GMT. That puts it 3 p.m. Pacific, 5 p.m. Eastern. So if you fancy tuning in during your lunch breaks or your afternoon smoke breaks up from work, that's where we'll be.
Can't wait to see you and Mr. VP, also known as Paul Hope. Exciting stuff. And I've got Amin the Dream this afternoon at 3:15 for about an hour, maybe a little bit less, but should be fun. And other than that, I haven't really scheduled much for next week. But I think I'm going to start doing a weekly show with Ryan from No Border Sports, 3:30 p.m. Pacific on Tuesday. Then I have Aaron 3:30 on Wednesday for First and Ted. I got Pete from Australia on Thursday at 2:45 Pacific, and then Bash doing bowling with Bash and Ted on Fridays at 3 p.m. So kind of got my afternoon set up, and I think I'm going to try just streaming one show a day. I think doing multiple shows a day, it kind of cannibalizes each other. So I'm going to start and maybe try and just keep it to like 4 shows a week or less, ideally, so that they don't all keep each other from thriving, if you will. I've noticed that like the 1 week where I only did 3, I had like 900 views, 500 views, almost 1,000 views. And this week, and part of it I'm sure is because Lance did poorly over the weekend. So like a lot of people are probably unhappy with me for being still on the Lance bandwagon, but I'm not getting off until, it's going to be a year or 2, honestly, at least, before I'm able to say like, maybe it was the wrong pick. Just the Niners letting him go, I don't think that's enough. I think I would need to see him fall on his face for a long time before I ever believe that he can't be great. Not that he is, or not that he's even mid. I called Purdy mid. Lance isn't even mid yet. I'll admit that. But,
this is it. There was one last thing I did want to do to you.
Oh no!
Before we go,
would you rather?
Now you surprised me last time with a would you rather. I have one for you. Now, for anyone who doesn't watch mine and Paul's show on a Tuesday, we have this thing where we are basically as evil as we possibly can be to each other and try to give each other PST, to be honest, some of the things we've done. So I've got one for you. I have come prepared this time.
Bring it on.
So, obviously, in view of hitting this 500 marker, and hopefully it's not the last of those markers you hit there, Ted.
Thanks.
For your would you rather, your special would you rather, would you rather have 10,000 followers on your YouTube channel tomorrow morning, monetized? Think of those checks coming in. Think of all the extra things you could do with the kids. You can say to the wife, you can take a bit of time off now.
See, honey?
It's all good. It's all good.
I made it.
Or would you rather have a VIP seat at the San Francisco 49ers home Super Bowl and you're going to sit next to Jerry Rice for the game? That's your would you rather.
Oh my gosh.
This is what me and Paul like to do to each other.
My God, that's brutal. I mean, I'd rather have the success on YouTube and having it pay for itself. It's been my number one goal for months. So sorry, Jerry.
Fair play. I'm putting his family first. You can't blame a man for putting his family first. Fair play.
Yeah. No, and Mike, yeah. I mean, because then this would be a career. That's the goal, is to make this a career. If I can make it pay. So, option A.
Okay. There it is.
Yeah.
There it is.
But not easy. I mean, that's brutal. That's brutal.
We've done far worse. Paul's had me calling up.
If he said Lance was going to win the Super Bowl, if he said I'm sitting next to Jerry and Lance wins the Super Bowl, then I'm going B. Then that would have been enough. So if it's to go to the Super Bowl and we don't know if we're going to win and we don't know who the QB is, I'm going with the sure thing, the YouTube thing. Yeah.
Fair enough. Can't blame you for that.
Yeah, love it. Brutal. There's one that's kind of been going around, so I'll just ask you that one. It's not necessarily specific to you as much, but I mean, just like the whole, like, would you rather have our setup now, or would you trade Bosa for a franchise QB?
No, I'd take Bosa.
Yeah, Bosa and Purdy, because Purdy could
I take Bosa.
Like I said, Purdy's limited. He's got a limited arm, limited height, limited top speed, but like none of those things is a deal breaker, and even all three is not a deal breaker. It just makes it very difficult. I don't think he will be a franchise QB, but I will not say it's impossible either. So just difficult.
You never know. I think with Carl's system, you don't necessarily have to have a franchise QB. I don't think you have to have a great to win a Super Bowl. but
No
you
doubt.
do need a truly great, a truly great pass rusher for this defense. It makes life so much easier.
Yeah, I've got Ty Alston in the house, 10% Ty, podcaster, agent extraordinaire. He can turn your podcast into podcast. He did it for me. I'm just about to start making some cash on mine, and Ty's been a big part of it. So thanks for all your help, Ty. But unfortunately, Ty, you're getting here right at the bitter. We are just about to sign off. But thanks to everybody who joined. Please like and subscribe here to my channel, also to the 49ers Faithful UK. Make sure you follow Nick at nludlam84 on Twitter. And till next time, I'll just say peace and go Niners.